The continuation of our topic on types of trade-offs. The third one is what we call re-rendering versus stored images. So in this case, when you store only the SVG source of a vector image, and when you render it as a bitmap image is always found in when you are doing CorelDRAW, you find out a bitmap image. Bitmap image is always a heavy graphics. And that heavy graphics, when you store it, it occupies more time, and then every time you are requesting for that bitmap image, you say that you are also trading time for space, because since it occupies more space, when you want to render it, it is not very easy. But when you render the image, when the page is changed and storing the rendered image, you will also be trading space for time. In that case, more space will be used but less time. And this technique is generally known as we call it caching. We call this technique caching, or what to call it. We call it caching. So you can re-render the image, or you can have stored image. So stored image, you occupy more space, but as you are requesting for the page, whenever you are requesting for the page, it takes time. It does not take time to execute stored image. So stored image occupies much space if it is when we are talking about bitmap images. But when we are rendering it, if we are rendering it, in that case it does not occupy more space, but the problem is that the execution time will be greater. That's also another trade-off. You can trade rendering to stored images. You want to store images, it will occupy space, but when you want to request for the page, it does not take time. Or rendering it, whereby the space occupied will be smaller, but as you are requesting for the page, it takes time to bring out the page. So it now depends on you. Then the last one is what we call smaller code versus loop unrolling. So this technique is commonly used to make the code longer for each iteration. Anytime you want to take iteration in a loop, but it saves the computation time. Taking iteration in a loop takes, it saves computational time, but the problem is that for the loop will be jumping back and forth from the beginning of the loop at the end of the loop, each iteration. So by jumping back and forth, it also makes it to occupy more space. But the good thing is that it saves the computational time. But when you are using larger codes size can be traded for higher program speed when you apply it using loop unrolling. So this is another type. So we have 4 types now of trade-offs. The first one is lookup versus recalculation, which I mentioned. The second one is compressed versus uncompressed data. Then the third one is rendering versus stored images, and the fourth one is smaller codes versus loop unrolling. So for the last one, loop unrolling, you're increasing the speed, but it takes much time. But if you're using smaller code, it saves the computational time. In that case, you're also trading time for space. Thank you very much.